Hey everybody, I'm Sonic Sons. It's June 5th, 2008, and it's been too long since I made my last video, but let's go on that. I love Middle-earth. Just put me top of the title of this thing. Well, actually, if it just says ideas for Middle-earth, that doesn't prove that I love it. Maybe I hate it. I'm just trying to revamp it. What we need here is spaceships, and, no. So I read, Lord of the Rings a long while ago. To be honest, it was like 6 years ago or something. But I loved it when I read it. Confused as I got sometimes. Being at the end, I had this map once, and then the map got lost, and long story. And of course, Peter Jackson made his movies, which turned out to be fabulous, in my humble opinion. Yes, I know they differ from the book in a zillion ways, and they don't have Tom Bombadil. Who cared about Tom Bombadil anyway? I'm sure some people did, and they're all mad at me right now. So Jackson made us 3 movies, and released extended cuts of each of these, putting in a little more stuff you couldn't fit into the 3-hour block that they have. People always used to say that, not everyone, but some people, you know, the people who didn't like the movie would always complain about the length. I always loved the length. It was like, you get around the 2.5-hour mark, and it's like, how much more is there? It keeps going, there's just more stuff, how cool is that? I guess the length really just exaggerates your feelings by that point. That is, if you've loved it, then having it go even longer is awesome. If you don't love it, then having it go even longer just makes it worse and worse. But to the point, you finally got around to making a movie about The Hobbit, and they're going to make a 5th movie, which they haven't given us a title for. It's like, could you give us a working title? Because we have no word for it except for like other. Like there's The Hobbit and there's the other film. Which, as Penny Arcade recently pointed out, there's no book between The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Like, yeah, well, I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting idea. So we'll call this the Untitled Middle-earth film, UMF, or the Bridge film. I've heard that. So what do we want to do with this? What do we want to do with these 2 movies? We're adding on to make a 5-movie series. And what do we further want to do? Do you want to change anything in the Lord of the Rings movies? Pull a George Lucas and do you say the words "pull a George Lucas," that's really gonna put a lot of people off. But we'll get that out in a bit. Let's see. So they're making Hobbit. Now, what's up with the Hobbit? Well, it'll do with Bilbo and the dwarves all going off to get their treasure back. Now, they said one of the problems is that The Hobbit, well, is much more of a children's book. In fact, I just reread it over the last couple of days. It's interesting how this works out. The style that Tolkien writes in, there's a whole lot for his set pieces, you might say. You know, it's like, okay, so we're here, and then we get to, you know, the trolls, and then there's like these misty mountains, and then there's like Mirkwood, and then there's Bjorn's house was in the middle there, whatever. And it's not like there's a whole lot of internal character development. I mean, you know, there's Bilbo, and you know, references to it, and then he was feeling more courageous, and okay. Well, it's not like huge, you know. Not like Bilbo ever has like a quiet moment, and he just gets all introspective and thinks about the meaning of his life, and no, it's basically like, oh, I wish I were my little hobbit hole. But then later on, he's like, oh, you know, I guess I can do this adventuring thingy. Something like that. The same anyways. It's more of a children's book, and there's some thought to darkening the tone. I don't know. Maybe a little bit. Maybe, I mean, how dark was the tone in the first place? It's hard to exactly judge these things. But I say the contrast is useful. This contrasting this and Lord of the Rings, because what we can do is the plotline of Lord of the Rings has us saving the world. The plotline of The Hobbit has us, you know, getting some treasure back. And granted, there's a dragon in the way, a lot of crap. But really not as big as like getting rid of Sauron, right? So hey, it shouldn't feel as big as getting rid of Sauron. And I wonder if there might be sort of a temptation among the people at at Weta and working on Jackson and everything. But Jackson won't be directing. It'll be Del Toro's directing. Jackson's like the executive producer or whatever. Apparently, making Lord of the Rings was so freaking hard that Jackson is still recovering. Something like, what, 5 years later? It's just like, you know what? I just let someone else do this one. And further, might be sort of a temptation to just emphasize everything and deck it out and make it all freaking awesome and huge. It can be awesome in the sense of, hey, we want this movie to be as good as possible. But it can't be huge to the residents of Middle-earth. From the interior fictional perspective, this thing has to be, okay, it's an event of importance, the whole quest. But it can't be as big as the quest to destroy the ring. I mean, what would it be like if the Battle of 5 Armies ends up, like, being Pelennor Fields or some crap? Which they could totally do, like, with digitally, and, they could just up everything, and jillions of people. No, don't do that. I say the Battle of 5 Armies should last no longer than 10 minutes. I think this whole deal should be told sort of from Bilbo's perspective, in the sense that he knows nothing about this whole adventuring thing, which granted neither did Frodo, but with Bilbo here, this whole adventuring thing, and from his perspective, everything is like, whoa, and big, and huge, and amazing to him, and since this is, quite helpfully, the first movie in the series, we can look at this, and it can be all big and amazing to us, because it's all we've ever seen, right? The first time you see just, like, a couple of goblins, or orcs. It took me a while to realize that they're essentially the same thing. Even now I don't know the exact difference, if they like subspecies of orc, or I don't know. First time we see just a couple of those, that can be, like, really cool, really threatening, We go into the caverns of the Misty Mountain, and we think, oh, this is so big and so cool, and Battle of 5 Armies should at the time seem rather cool. I would like to do it very much from on the ground perspective, sort of a Bilbo thing. Don't do so much of the grand vistas and all this awesome stuff, which is awesome in Lord of the Rings. I keep it more to Bilbo's perspective, and there's just sort of chaos going all around him, and once in a while we get a shot of like what's generally happening, so the audience has a clue. He doesn't know what's going on. He's running to and fro here, and it's just a chaos of battle on the small level. Such that, when we see the freaking charge of Rohan in Return of the King, we can imagine, like, wow, what this is like on a small scale, and here it is on huge scale, and you have more experience of that. You have, what I really want is for, if you imagine some people who know nothing about Lord of the Rings, and they end up watching the 5 movies in order. I think people, when they get to Helm's Deep, for instance, like, among the audience, it should be like, oh man, do you remember when we thought the Battle of 5 Armies was cool? And look at all this! Just hugely up in the ante. Because, as far as the plot is concerned, well, we got freaking 10,000 Uruk-hai orc people. Are they all Uruk-hai? See, this is how little I know about Lord of the Rings. Are they all Uruk-hai, or are there a few orcs in there? I'm thinking it's Uruk-hai. Yeah, I think it is. Alright, anyway. And of course, you'll probably get into the differences between the books and the movies, those elves that show up at Helm's Deep, and some people are mad about that, I'm sure, and it works fine. But plot-wise, Battle of 5 Armies is just not as big as Battle of Helm's Deep or Pelennor Fields. So hey, let's show that. And again, it's big from Bilbo's perspective.